Have you ever noticed how the world turns its back on moments that deserve reverence? One second you're watching the horizon in peace, and the next, everything you've held dear is torn apart by someone who doesn't even glance your way. The loud snap of wood echoed through the dock like a silent scream, but no one looked twice. "Just an old fishing boat. Move along," barked a voice from a shining yacht, slicing through the harbor like it owned the ocean. Phones rose. Laughter followed. No help, no apologies. Among floating shards, a faded American flag drifted, tattered, stained, and ignored. That wasn't just any vessel. It was Liberty's Child, built from scratch by Thomas Reynolds, a retired Navy veteran. For more than 40 years, this boat had been his refuge, his companion, his piece of home on the water. Its paint had faded, its boards bore salt scars, but it wasn't made for eyes. It was built for memory. Why do people record wreckage instead of preventing it? And why does the world respect noise more than silence? The answer stung in Thomas's chest as he stood watching his life's work being laughed at. Earlier that day, he had launched before dawn, same as always, steering Liberty's Child toward the quiet bay he visited every morning. The wind was calm, the sky streaked with pink. Then came La Vida, a 600-ton Italian yacht owned by Jackson Reed, a tech magnate new to the area. Champagne clinked above the roar of engines. Thomas waved both arms, shouting, "Hey, watch it!" But his cries were drowned out. Reed didn't slow down, he didn't even notice. A marina guard nearby simply watched. No warning, no reaction. In an instant, Liberty's Child was torn down the middle. Thomas dove into the sea, escaping death by seconds. He surfaced, heart pounding, searching for his boat. All that remained floated in splinters. He swam toward the flag, pulled it into his arms like a wounded brother. No one moved. Only phones clicked, capturing a legacy's last breath. Reed stood above it all, sunglasses glinting. "Time to get with the times, old man," he mocked. But the crowd didn't laugh. Not this time. That evening, Thomas sat alone. His bones ached, his soul heavier than ever. The harbor had been silent, but within him, a storm surged. The world didn't see the value in old wood, or a man who'd spent his life navigating not just water, but war and time. To them, he was part of the background. If stories like this resonate with you, like and subscribe. Help us bring the voices that matter into the light. And so the sea took Liberty's Child, but not without leaving behind an echo, one that would refuse to be ignored. Morning arrived like any other, quiet, routine, indifferent. But inside Thomas's modest seaside home, the weight of yesterday still lingered. Coffee turned cold in his hands as the news praised the La Vida, hailing it as the grandest vessel to dock in the marina. Not a single word about the accident. Not a whisper about the man who had lost his life's companion beneath that celebration of excess. On social media, the video spread like wildfire, but not for justice, only for ridicule. "Rusty relic sunk," one post read. "Old man rage," said another. Dozens of memes mocked the scene, turning heartbreak into a punchline. Even the American flag, soaked and torn, became a target. Disrespect echoed louder than any voice of reason. In the quiet kitchen, Thomas opened a weathered wooden box. Inside were snapshots of youth in uniform, medals no longer gleaming, folded letters from commanders long gone. Beneath it all lay the flag presented to him upon retirement, crisp, folded tight, a symbol of honor. Standing nearby, his grandson, Michael, watched. His voice cracked as he asked, "Aren't you going to do something, Grandpa?" He destroyed everything. Thomas didn't answer right away. His fingers brushed over the stars of the flag. He didn't destroy what the world valued. He just broke something only I remembered existed. That reply, though calm, pierced deeper than anger ever could. Michael stepped back, understanding more in his silence than in any outburst. That night, Thomas opened his nautical journal, pages filled over decades. Each line captured tides, wind, emotions. He wrote one short entry: Day 1 without liberties. Child, no justice. Still, the sea calls. Later, a call came. The insurance representative's voice was cold, mechanical. No compensation. Your vessel didn't meet modern regulations. No radar reflector. Poor visibility. Liability is yours. Thomas thanked her. He didn't argue. Explaining wouldn't change the outcome. Outside, the town pulsed forward. Shops opened. Waves lapped. Tourists posed for photos near yachts. No one looked toward the quiet house near the shore, where a man sat with eyes fixed on the horizon, lost in memories of salt and sun. But the sea remembers what people forget. While humanity scrolls past truth, the ocean retains it, whispering it back to those who still listen. It knows stories lost, voices unheard, lives erased not by time, but by neglect. In that vast silence, something began to shift. Not loud, not visible, but real. The kind of shift that starts not in crowds, but in conscience. Whispers began to rise. Somewhere between cruelty and conscience, the tide started to turn. A video surfaced, not of the crash, but of Thomas Reynolds, saluting as he retrieved his soaked flag. No captions, no commentary. Just reverence. That moment, quiet and raw, spoke louder than all the laughter. And for the first time, people listened. An anonymous post read, "This man gave everything, and we gave him nothing." It spread. Soon hashtags shifted. Jan veteran salute replaced Mine boomer down. Mocking voices fell silent. Messages of apology and admiration took over. "I was wrong," one person wrote. "He's more than a boat." Then came the ceremony, organized by the Navy, discreet but deliberate. Admiral Nelson himself arrived to present Thomas with a new flag. The marina fell quiet as veterans, locals, and even former critics watched. From a distance, Jackson Reed observed silently from La Vida's deck, no longer smiling. After the salute, Nelson approached. "Your grandson wrote to us. Why didn't you?" Thomas, holding the folded flag, replied, "It was only a boat." Nelson's expression hardened. "No, it was never just a boat, and you, Reynolds, are far more than a retired sailor." Then something remarkable occurred. Townspeople, those who once passed Thomas without notice, stepped forward. One by one. They shook his hand. Some apologized. Others simply nodded, unsure of what to say. The marina owner granted him lifetime docking rights, should he ever have another boat. The harbor master promised him a permanent fishing permit. No questions asked. A modest memorial appeared at the dock where Liberty's Child once tied. Carved into a smooth stone, Liberty's Child, a vessel that carried more than one life. Children began to gather around Thomas again. He taught them sailors' knots, the rhythm of the tides, and how to find Polaris. "This knot," he'd say, "has saved lives at sea, just like memory saves those we forget." One afternoon, a little girl named Lily looked up at him after a lesson. "Are you mad at the man who broke your boat?" Thomas looked at the sky for a moment, then gently smiled. If he hadn't done it, maybe nobody would remember the boat ever existed. Those words settled over the children like the mist of the morning tide, soft, lingering, unforgettable. And so, through humility, a quiet man was slowly being remembered, not for what he lost, but for what he had given without ever asking anything in return. Footsteps echoed on the dock once more, this time slow, deliberate. Jackson Reed stood alone, no entourage, no designer sunglasses, just a plain envelope in trembling hands. Thomas looked up from the bench near the marina. Their eyes met, and the air stiffened like a pulled rope before a storm. "I came to apologize," Reed began. His voice lacked the arrogance it once carried. "What I did, it was inexcusable. I was proud, blind, and I didn't even look. I'm sorry." Thomas said nothing. He simply waited. Reed continued, opening the envelope. "Inside is a blank check. Fill in any number. Name the cost. Your pain, your boat, your legacy." Thomas gently shook his head. "You can't buy what's gone." Desperate, Reed pressed on. "Then tell me what I can do." "I can't erase what I did, but I want to make it right." Thomas gazed toward the horizon. "On the west shore, there's a spot that catches the morning light. Build a bench there. Solid wood. Lasting. Carve 3 words into it. Sit. Remember. Be grateful." Reed hesitated. "That's all?" "That's enough." 2 days later, a craftsman from Seattle arrived. He worked in silence, constructing the bench with care. Reed helped. No cameras, no articles, no staff. His hands blistered, sweat rolled. But he worked. When it was finished, the words gleamed. In bronze, sit, remember, be grateful. Though Reed tried to stay invisible, a local snapped a photo and shared it. The story spread once more. Veteran rejects millions, asks for a bench. Public opinion shifted again. Not for Reed, but for the message. Thomas resumed his life, no longer fishing, but teaching. Children came by, curious and eager. He gave them stories, wisdom, presence. His legacy no longer floated in the harbor. It stood solid on land, etched in wood, repeated in grateful hearts. The bench became a gathering place. Visitors sat in quiet reflection. Some cried, some prayed. Others simply watched the sea. And Thomas? He did what he'd always done. He listened. Not for applause, not for praise, but for the soft murmur of the tide that still knew his name. Days turned into weeks. The bench on the west shore became a landmark. Tourists, locals, strangers, each one paused there to reflect. But Thomas Reynolds did not seek attention. He never had. What he wanted was simple: peace, dignity, and perhaps a whisper of understanding from a world that had forgotten how to listen. He kept teaching. Children returned, eager to hear about navigation, tides, constellations, and how knots could hold lives together. "A knot isn't just rope," he told them. "It's a promise." One afternoon, Admiral Nelson returned, not in full dress, but in plain clothes. He found Thomas by the docks, coiling rope with practiced hands. "We have a proposal," Nelson said. "The Navy is launching a youth program, training in maritime. Ethics, environmental care, navigation. We need someone who knows the sea and people." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "You want me to teach?" "We want someone who lived it, who still lives it." Before Thomas could respond, a small commotion drew their attention. A boat was approaching, sleek, wooden, familiar. Michael, Thomas's grandson, stood at the helm, beaming. "Surprise, Grandpa!" The boat docked gently. It bore a new coat of paint, reinforced structure, updated electronics. But the name on the stern brought tears to Thomas's eyes. Liberty's Child. "I found your old plans," Michael explained. "The veterans helped. The local builders pitched in. It's not exactly the same, but it carries your spirit." Thomas stepped aboard. His hand ran over the polished railing. The deck creaked beneath his weight like an old friend waking from sleep. He looked toward the horizon as the breeze filled the air with salt and sunlight. The flag fluttered once again at the stern. "It's beautiful," Thomas finally said. "But it's not just a boat." Michael nodded. "It's your heart rebuilt. Stronger." Admiral Nelson clapped a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "What do you say, sailor? One more voyage with a new crew?" Thomas smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling like old sails. "Let's teach them to respect the ocean." And just like that, the sea called again. Not to take, but to give back. Through hands young and old, a vessel reborn carried more than wood and metal. It carried the resilience of a man who never asked for redemption. yet received it from the waves he'd always trusted. Golden twilight spilled across the calm waters. Thomas Reynolds sat on the West Shore bench, the one he asked Jackson Reed to build. Around him, the marina bustled with life. Boats came and went, children played nearby. But in that moment, Thomas was still, a lighthouse in human form. Beside him, a father read the bronze inscription to his daughter. "It means we take time to honor those who came before us." The child looked over at Thomas. "Did you build this bench?" Thomas chuckled softly. "No, but I asked for it, and that made all the difference." Liberty's Child, the new version, floated in the distance. Modern, sure, but deeply familiar. Its core wasn't in its hull, it was in its purpose. It carried stories, love, and memory. It didn't sail to catch fish anymore. It sailed to connect generations. Thomas spent more time teaching than anything else. He showed how the stars told time, how wind shapes current, and how to tie knots that hold when storms hit. "The ocean isn't just water," he told them. "It's a keeper of truths." Visitors came from across the country to see the bench. Some brought flowers, others left handwritten notes. Many just sat, letting the sea speak to them. The bench became sacred ground, not by design, but by feeling. The local council named the dock after him, Reynolds Pier. The dedication was modest, just like him. No speeches, just gratitude. Admiral Nelson returned with final confirmation. The Youth Maritime Program would begin in 2 months. Thomas would lead it. Flexible hours, full autonomy, community support. It was official now. What began as a quiet life was now a foundation for the future. One morning, Thomas watched as Michael took the helm of Liberty's Child with a group of students. He gave them space, watching from the dock as they learned how to read the sky and respect the waves. Back on the bench that evening, Thomas closed his eyes and listened, not just to the water, but to everything it carried. Echoes of service, laughter of children, apologies turned into action. He never needed justice in the way others thought. He never wanted money. What he yearned for was acknowledgement. And now, in the rhythm of the waves and the joy of learning, he had everything he needed. The day began with the scent of salt and the hush of rising tide. Thomas Reynolds prepared for something he hadn't done in years. He dressed not for routine, but for ceremony. Though there were no medals, no podiums, today carried weight. It was the inaugural sale of the youth program he now led. Children gathered by the dock, their eyes wide with anticipation. He stepped onto the renewed Liberty's Child, which now bore not just a name, but a new legacy. Each plank held memories. Each bolt whispered of the hands that rebuilt it. He looked at the students. "Before we leave, tell me, what does the sea demand?" "Respect," a boy answered. "Honor," said another. "Listening," whispered a girl in the back. Thomas nodded. "Good, then let's sail." The boat moved gently, pushed by a soft breeze. Laughter floated behind them. He pointed out constellations even in daylight, explained wind patterns, and showed how to trim sails. The children leaned in, absorbing every detail. It wasn't a lesson. It was a passing of something sacred. From the shore, Michael and Admiral Nelson watched, pride glowing in their eyes. The town had changed. And Thomas? He hadn't changed. He had returned to who he always was, just finally seen. Later that evening, he returned to the bench on the West Shore. The sun dipped low, casting golden threads across the horizon. A family sat nearby. The father read the bench aloud. "Sit. Remember. Be grateful." The child beside him asked, "Who made this bench?" The man turned to Thomas. "He did." Thomas simply smiled. Visitors came quietly. No crowds. Just individuals drawn by the silence that held meaning. A former sailor dropped anchor for the first time in 20 years, just to sit there. A woman lit a candle for her father, who served in the Pacific. A child left a note that read, "Thank you for showing us how to care." This wasn't fame. It was something deeper. Thomas had become a symbol, not of grief, but of resilience. His story didn't end with destruction. It unfolded into restoration, community, purpose. In his journal, he wrote, "First voyage with the kids. No nets, no traps, just knowledge. The sea felt lighter today, and indeed it did. The waves seemed softer, the seagulls quieter, the dock sturdier. Not every hero wears uniforms forever. Some become teachers, some become stories told around docks, and some simply sit, remembering and thanking the tide that always brings them home." A month had passed since the new Liberty's child first set sail, but the transformation it sparked endured. Thomas Reynolds remained as steady as ever. Early mornings, quiet walks, gentle teachings, but around him, the world hummed differently. People stopped to greet him. Children waved from bikes. Strangers left messages on the bench. The phrase, "Sit, remember, be grateful," had become more than an inscription. It had become a philosophy. At the dock, a group of teens practiced tying nautical knots under his supervision. "This one," he said, demonstrating the bowline, "is a rescue knot. It saves lives, like memory saves dignity." In the background, Liberty's child bobbed gently, ready for another day of teaching. Outfitted with modern navigation, but powered by an old soul, the boat had taken on a life of its own. It was a classroom, a tribute, a second chance. Admiral Nelson returned one final time with news. "The youth program's expansion is approved. Other towns want what you've built." Thomas, now fully immersed in his unexpected mission, smiled. "Then let's show them what legacy looks like." That evening, he sat once again on the bench. A young couple joined him, their little boy hopping onto the seat. "Why is this bench so special, Dad?" the child asked. The father replied, "Because sometimes we need a place to stop and remember people who make the world better." The boy looked at Thomas. "Was it you?" Thomas chuckled. "Let's just say I asked for the right thing at the right time." As night fell, the ocean mirrored the stars. The waves, ever faithful, whispered the past back into the present. Thomas didn't need recognition. He had the sea, and it never forgets. That next morning, the harbor stirred to life again. But something was different. As boats departed, they each passed by Reynolds Pier and dipped their flags in silent salute. Not a coordinated act, not planned, but understood. It wasn't about a broken boat anymore. It was about the man who never broke. He had given his town a reason to pause, a reason to reflect, a reason to remember that quiet strength builds louder legacies than any explosion of fame ever could. Thomas Reynolds never asked the sea for anything, but the sea in its vastness gave him everything in return. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, consider sharing it. And don't forget to subscribe, so more voices like Thomas's are never left behind.